Hey everyone, Tom from Catching Up with the Nerds, and welcome to what is Moon Knight WhatsApp Edition Part 2. Yes, we're late, we know, but hey, better late than never, right? So, please sit down, relax, and listen to myself, Sarah, Dave, JC, and James trying to come up with our best theories and ideas and thoughts on Moon Knight.
So overall, I thought Moon Knight was good. I did enjoy getting to know this new superhero, and I did think that it was a different type of origin story. Obviously, someone with multiple personality disorder and how it was told, the different perspective switch and everything. I thought the effects were really good. I also thought it was interesting that it's probably the most newbie friendly of the Disney Plus series so far. Because if you think about it, all the ones from last year, all the Disney Plus series were all about characters that we've known, or were ones that we were less familiar with. So obviously Wanda, Hawkvision, WandaVision and Hawkeye. Sorry about that, and Loki. So they were all characters we already knew. This is the first one of a completely new superhero. And also was interesting because obviously last year we had Shang-Chi the movie, who was also a new hero. Shang-Chi very carefully, obviously, implemented. He lives in the world with the Marvel heroes, mentions the blip, etc. We didn't get any of that in Moon Knight. Apologies in advance if I've forgotten, but I don't remember him mentioning the blip at all. And considering he's a character who forgot parts of the day and days at a time, you would think missing out on 5 years would be a point that he would very much remember. I know from news, apparently they were trying to get someone from Eternals to make a cameo appearance, but they decided to use the budget elsewhere, which I think was a good call. But basically, this kind of falls into, I think it was JC who said maybe this is a whole different universe. I think that kind of feeds into that theory, where he mentioned the blip at all. We got like the Egyptians saying they want to keep a secret, despite the fact that we know the gods from Thor's world are a thing. Maybe this does take place in a whole different reality, and maybe we just don't realize it. Maybe one with the Eternals or something else entirely. So that was one that I if anything, the Moon Knight kind of reminded me of the Netflix series. You know how kind of like they alluded to the other superheroes but never said anything outright, because in the end they were kind of separate and now they're not anymore. So I'm wondering if they're going to play that kind of card. But yeah, that's kind of my overall. I wish Moon Knight wasn't just 6 episodes as well. I wish it was like one more episode to kind of like not feel so lore dumping all the time. I felt like if we had one episode to kind of like make the lore breathe, I think it would have been better. In terms of the ending, I was a little bit hit and miss with the whole. Don't get me wrong, Isaac did an amazing job doing the different personalities, and I think Mark and Steve very distinct from the start, and I love the interactions, and I thought the effects to have them both in the same shot was fantastic. And the ending on the second to last episode, where obviously Steve got turned to stone, was very tragic, and then the whole balancing was a really nice way of saying, oh, he's now, he's faced with his trauma and now he's ready to let it go. But then he kind of goes back and gets him, which is sweet on the level, because obviously we've grown, attached to Steve. But at the same time, in real life, when you have multiple personality disorder, just based on what I, researched a little bit, the multiple personality disorder, a therapist's job is to help fuse the separate personality traits together, so that way a person can have control of their life and don't have their life completely unraveled by various triggers. So this one kind of says, oh no, they're gonna like share the same body, will be fine. I mean, don't get me wrong, the banter was great, but unintentionally, if you apply any sort of real world thought to it, it's kind of like, there's a part of this arc that's kind of missing. It kind of reminded me of Once Upon a Time. I don't know if any of you guys watched it, where Regina, I think it was season 6 or 7, she splits her evil self and her good self apart, and then later on you think the arc's going to be like, oh, you got to accept both parts of yourself, become a whole person. Nope, she just like, oh well, I let my evil self have his own life, bye. So it just feels like something's missing, maybe because of the third personality. They need to combine their strengths together to obviously defeat this third personality. But I'm hoping they'll kind of address it in the next probably not next season, but in the future, because I've got thoughts on that.
Personally, I agree with a lot of points that you made, Sarah, and I think JC and David probably also mentioned about the whole it's in a different universe, because it would make so much sense for this series not to be in the same universe. There's so much stuff that you just when I was watching it, a lot of the things that were coming up, I very much kept thinking, "Where's everyone else? Where's the other Avengers?" It's like, everyone's point last time about the whole changing the stars in the sky and stuff. I still stand by that it was only in that area, but still, that was a big thing that happened. And the fact that they can change it to nighttime whenever, because that happened in the last episode, that they could just change it to night immediately, and not no one turned up to find out what was happening. It just seemed a little bit off in a way. But to be honest, I read quite a bit into a bit of the lore, the characters, and all those type of things. The Egyptian gods are in a plane of their own. They're in some like pocket dimension that looks like a pyramid out in space. So I have a feeling that they kind of in their own world that kind of intervenes with all universes. I don't know if this is touched on and Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness or anything, but obviously, multiverse stuff is a big factor in the new DC, not DC, what am I talking about? Sorry, new Marvel stuff. So yeah, it would only make sense that they're gonna potentially pop up in other universes and things, because I know Black Panther's Panther God is part of the same circle as the rest of these Egyptian gods and stuff, and obviously Thor Love and Thunder is going to be the whole God Butcher coming in, killing a lot of gods, which will probably end up killing a few of these guys as well, because I think quite a few of them were pretty useless, and that was the other weird factors with a lot of these gods, that they weren't doing anything at all in it at all, which is I think it was part of the philosophy that they didn't want to get involved with humans and really focus too much on what's happening. They were off in their own little dimension, so they're not too bothered about what's happening on Earth so much until their avatars get killed. I forget the name of the character, but the Hippo Goddess was fantastic. I thought that was a very great character, and I hope that they reuse that character. May, the actress that plays Layla, she for an actor that I've not heard of or anything, I thought she was fantastic. She was probably my favorite character in the series. Her story arc was great. What they did for her in the last episode was unexpected. Having her be an avatar with her own powers and stuff, which was kind of like a Egyptian falcon, which was really cool. I hope they use her again. And then that whole idea of the fact that anyone can become an avatar kind of makes it like they could be their own superhero team, or the gods, if they actually work together. So potentially you could have a really cool mishmash of superheroes becoming avatars to get additional powers in the future, if they wanted to go down that route, or just have bog standard humans that are side characters become superheroes by doing the same thing of being an avatar for one of these gods, which is quite interesting for future potential. Oscar Isaac was fantastic. I'll be honest, I was not much of a fan of him beforehand. I didn't like him in Star Wars. I think it was Annihilation he was in, which again I didn't particularly think he was particularly great in. But this, he was fantastic. He did such a good job with playing Mark, Stephen, and obviously Jake, which was the big reveal at the end, which I kind of spoiled to myself, because obviously I'd done my research a bit on the character, so I knew Jake was coming. The whole, oh, we'll let you go, don't worry about it, you, Mark, and Stephen are free, but obviously, he's still being controlled through Jake, is kind of predictable, and that was my problem with the series. The very last episode, a lot of it was very predictable. I thought episode 4 and 5 were brilliant. touching on the serious mental health issues and also the Egyptian law about the afterlife. I thought that was brilliant. Those were like the pinnacle, I think, of the series. And then episode 6, the last one, it was very predictable. We kind of knew there was going to be a big fight scene. Though the animation for the two gods fighting in the background, the big kaiju fight, that was quite good. I love a love a good kaiju fight. But all in all, the series was great for a character that I never really paid much attention to. He was just always a bit of a mean character who just pop up and swear at a few people, and that was it. They've really made a fantastic feature character for the series, and um, there's supposed to be a wolf by night. Is a werewolf by night the name of the character? He's going to be having a special Halloween episode, which, if you know, Moon Knight was a villain of his. That was his first appearance. So I believe that they're bringing him into it, which I think a lot of people predicted that he was going to be in this film because there was a werewolf-looking creature at the beginning, but it was a jackal, which a little bit different, I guess. But yeah, no, it was a really good series.
Okay, so I finally got out of the cinema and I just went to watch Doctor Strange 2. But I wanted first to talk about Moon Knight briefly. Really enjoyed it because I'm a massive Egyptian god nerd. That's something I was massively into growing up. I was fascinated. I'm fascinated by anything that is related to the Egyptian culture, that is related to the Egyptian gods. I think there's a lot to learn. It's very interesting if you're into this kind of stuff. So, so I thought the 6 episodes went really fast. I remember watching episode 1 of Moon Knight, and even though it was 40 minutes long, something like that, it felt like 30 seconds to me. So that's showing you how much I really enjoyed this. Really like every single episode. I think is a very underrated show, and I think it wasn't nearly talked about as much as the other ones prior to that. Mainly, I think because of, it's not a massive character in the MCU or the Marvel universe in general. So I really loved it. I thought it was a breath of fresh air, getting to know a new character and having it, getting 6 episodes and knowing also that the production behind it was with an Egyptian director. The music was made by Egyptian band, so everything was fairly authentic. But there's one thing though that I don't know if anyone's noticed, but so obviously we've seen the 2 versions of the Moon Knight. We've seen the Mark 1, which is the one with the cape, which is like the kind of the badass guy, in between the crazy Jack, is it? I think the one we never see, but we know is in the background and is ultra violent. And then you've got the Mark 1, which is the one with the cape that we see from time to time, which is there to save the day most of the time. And then you've got the Steven version, which is the British one. But the one thing I found weird and I haven't seen anyone talk about is he just reminded me of Deadpool. Like, there's a copy in terms of design, copy and paste of Deadpool, and then in terms of the comedy timing and in terms of what he does, very Deadpool. So I thought that was like, okay, are they trying to replace Deadpool with a new character? I don't think they are, because there should be, I think, a new Deadpool coming up soon. So I thought that was something funny. His fighting style, the way he would just crack up a joke in the middle of a fight, the way he moves during the fight is very reminiscent of Deadpool. That said, I kind of want to pivot on something else. So I'm not going to spoil Doctor Strange 2 because I don't know who's watched it, and it's been out for a week, and I don't think it's okay yet to spoil it for anything or for anyone, or just to go into too much depth. But there's one thing that coming out of the theater and watching it, and I was like, it's really weird because we've sat now through WandaVision, we've sat through Loki, we've sat through Hawkeye, we've sat through what else was there in terms of series, Moon Knight now, What If, but the one thing I've realized in all the movies in between, right, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange too, and without spoiling anything, like we still don't really know who the bad guy is, and I'm starting also to think that I don't know if there's gonna be a big bad guy like Thanos was, right? I don't even know if there's gonna be that. I'm starting to feel like they are going to move into the direction of, well, we're getting slices of different universes, and the heroes within it, we get to see those guys. I'm starting to feel like we are not going to see them crossing over. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's going to be a big bad guy. Like, I thought it was going to be Kang at the end of Loki, but then that version got killed. I don't really know where this is going for this phase. But what I'm saying is that I don't know if we should maybe expect a big bad guy. Like, should we expect another Thanos? Because you could argue that, well, it's been done before, and then when a big bad guy will come up, when the ultimate bad guy will show up, well, we'll start drawing comparison to, well, Thanos was more interesting, it was more of a badass, so he was doing this or doing that, and then you'd expect the big fight at the end of it. And maybe that's been done before, so that's why I'm thinking maybe isn't going to be a Kang, or there's going to be one, but it's going to be dealt with fairly quickly. So yeah, I don't know what you guys think about that. Let me know, because I'm kind of confused about where this is all going.
I just wanted to respond to the end of Tom's recording and say basically that everyone is thinking exactly what you're thinking, Tom, that the thread is not, it doesn't seem to be as tight as it was in previous phases, but you also have to remember that phase one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe was basically just introducing all the characters, and they brought them together for the Avengers, and then it was at the end of Avengers that we found out about Thanos. So I think we're kind of in, well, are we in phase 5 or whatever, is like more of a phase 1, where they're assembling everyone, pun not intended, they're assembling everyone, and it is a bit more scattergun, and then at the end of this phase, I believe they'll reveal who the villain is. I have something of an idea, because the one of the key terms they used in Doctor Strange 2, and then particularly in the mid-credit scene, with what happens there, it leads you down a certain comic book path. I can tell you guys what that comic book is. I'm sure some of you who have seen the film have gone and researched it and looked it up, but I won't spoil anything in this voice note. So yeah, they are leading to something, and there is a villain, an unorthodox villain, in terms of the comic books version of this story. I don't know if they'll keep it the same, but I'm pretty sure they do have a plan. And they, in fact, had a meeting a few weeks ago where Kevin Feige was there with a bunch of other people at Marvel to talk about where the overarching story is going. And it's going to be very interesting. Very interesting.
So first off, Sarah, I really love that you kind of went into this notion of this being like an origin story. I had the same thought, just like finally we get like a new superhero has an origin through a series and not just like crammed into a movie. So I really love that about the show, and I thought that it's a really kind of introductory moment for people that maybe not are into this, that they could get into this via this character, right? That's why I hope that the character does come back to do more. With regards to your point about like trauma, and just kind of like what the kind of dissociative or more so the dissociative identity disorder that Stephen has. First and foremost, I will say like I did love the fact that once again we're getting more representation in these superheroes. I may be wrong about this, but this is our first identifying as neurodivergent superhero that we've had, and which is cool, right? Because it's like goes to show like by the one of the things I loved about it. While I don't think that the science behind how a person with dissociative identity disorder gets better necessarily, to your point, maybe tracks with what the show did. I love the fact that his own weakness, as a perceived weakness of his neurodivergence, becomes actually one of his strengths later in the show. And narrative-wise, I really appreciated that. They didn't just play it as like, this is what makes him broken, but actually him acknowledging the other half of him is what actually gives him a greater power down the line, which I really liked. I think that from a healing perspective, I think that the path for healing, and I have not read the comics, so I don't know if this is what Mark and Steven end up doing, but I think the path for healing for them is like this is just a beginning. It's like it's really is the story of Mark acknowledging Steven for what Steven is, which is the person that has defended him this whole time. Due to what happened to Mark when he was a kid, and I think that this is the first part in finding a way to fuse themselves back together, knowing that they need each other in order to survive. But we'll see how that plays out. I think it's a really interesting storyline that I hope they can keep building on. Then James, you brought up Layla, and I'm so glad you did because once again, tying back to the representation piece, probably my favorite moment in the entire show, even though it was a little bit forced, but it's when Layla's got the full armor on and everything. She's kind of like the Egyptian Falcon sort of thing going on. And the little girl says like, "Are you an Egyptian superhero?" And she's like, "Yes." And that was so cool. It felt forced in there. And it's, I think, because I think that if it hadn't been forced in there, I don't think people would have talked about it. And that's kind of the sad reality of the world we live in. But at the same time, I love that they did it, which is like an acknowledgement of just like, yeah, like I can't wait until we get to the point where we've done enough superheroes where it's like there's a Honduran superhero that gets acknowledged, which I think we're pretty far away from, unfortunately. But hey, there you go. But same, we have Latino superheroes coming up that we may or may not be talking about soon, maybe. That I do want to talk about a bit later in another episode. But also the end credit scene. James, I think you talked about like Jake showing up and so forth at the end, and for me it was like I didn't know Jake was coming, but I had that mildly spoiled for me in some ways. Same. But what actually for me was most interesting is that, and I may be wrong about this once again, but it's like, is this the first end credits scene that actually helps to tie up an actual plot point? Because usually end credits scenes actually just open up stuff for further movies or further shows, and this one actually like it gave it some finality, because as far as we knew, like the bad guy had kind of like not gotten away with it, but was just like trapped. And this time it's like, oh no, you're out, dude. Like, yeah, we're gonna take you out. This really bad dude's gonna take you out, and off we go. So I thought that was interesting in terms of how to use an end credits scene. Tom, you talked about Egyptian director. Same, super impressed with that. The fact that they're owning it up in terms of like doing diversity all the way through to the people behind the camera. That's super cool. The Deadpool comment, I was cracking up, and actually it made me think about if they do like a what if series of what if Deadpool became Moon Knight, and then they just went on an adventure with Khonshu. And like Deadpool was like the funny dude and Khonshu's like the straight man on an adventure together, and like Deadpool's constantly undermining Khonshu and his plans in like the way that only Deadpool can do. I am so there for that version of What If. Like that would be amazing to me. And on that note too, if we would have gotten on a kaiju note that James brought up, if we would have gotten like a kaiju level Moon Knight, I think that would have been dope. But anyways, that's for another show. But yeah, no, just overall really enjoyed the show. I won't ramble for too long more. Just stuff that I thought were real highlights were I call it the Indiana Jones episode, where like they're basically just going into a tomb and trying to find a thing in a tomb. Super fun actually. Like we love that episode. Then like walking on the side of like cliffs that are like booby traps are about to go off and stuff like that. Like just love that one to bits. And then the one once we go into Mark's head, at first I was like, where are we going with this? But I actually really enjoyed those episodes. Thought that was really clever way of portraying like Mark's state and like his dissociative state. I think is really interesting the way they kind of went into it and they got a bit weird with it, which every time Marvel gets weird, I'm there for it. It did take me out of the main plot, and then I had a hard time coming back to my plot. But wait, I'm positives right now. I'll come back to the negatives later. And yeah, and then just overall like the when we did get like the fight sequences, I thought they were pretty well laid out and cool. The sequence with Mark and Steven kind of coming together and them acknowledging each other and seeing Steven's sacrifice and seeing him kind of like that both of them having like equal growth journeys, but arriving at different points, where like Steven realizing that he's there to help Mark, but Mark realizing that he's there because he needs Steven in his life. I thought it was just lovely. Like that was super nicely done, and I was really there for it. Of course, Isaac was awesome, like the whole way. Like really enjoyed his acting. The only cons, I got a big con actually in this one, to be honest, which is the ending. The fact that Jake comes in and kills everyone. I just felt we got robbed of something there. Like, I get it that Jake's been like the mystery box and all this and stuff, but I literally had to look this up because I've heard other people talk about this in like film podcasts and stuff, but like the term of like, was it Deus Ex Machina? Which is basically like when somebody comes in at the end of the movie that you weren't expecting, or a thing happens you weren't expecting that all of a sudden solves the whole plot for you, and it's not what was building up to it. I felt that kind of happen where I'm like, okay, I kind of want to now see Moon Knight do the Moon Knighty thing. Like, I want to see the hero actually save the day, and then leave Jake there for something else. For sure, that was necessary, but I just kind of felt we got robbed a little bit there, despite the fact that overall I actually really, really do like the show. That's really my only complaint, I would say. There's some other mythology level stuff that I agree that maybe we need to figure out. If this isn't Earth 616, I think that clears it all up. If it is, then it's a bit weird. Maybe we're not in the same time. Maybe this is earlier in time. Don't know. But yeah, looking forward to what's next with Moon Knight. Glad everybody got to chip in. And yeah, let's keep the thread going, everyone. Have fun. Bye.
And there you have it. Thanks again for listening to this awesome episode of Moon Knight WhatsApp Edition Part 2. Thanks also to James, Sarah, JC, and Dave for making this possible. We'll be back very soon with more nerdy content. In the meantime, please do give us a follow, a subscribe, a 5-star review from wherever you're getting this podcast from. Again, we'll catch you all in the next one.